What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the weekend college basketball betting preview. I'm Stuckey. Joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Mike Calabrese and Greg Waddel. Normal episode today. We'll have Tanner with his Amis Minute. We'll talk some good and bad from the week that was. We'll add a futures bet to our portfolio. And there's one, and then we'll obviously look at our weekend looks. But there's one difference this week. We'll have our first conference tournament preview with the Atlantic Sun, which starts on Sunday. And then the three guys from the three-man weave are going to cover, I think, 3 conference tournaments that start early next week. We'll have another episode Monday, Tuesday, and then there's just going to be like 8 to 9 episodes covering conference tournaments. We'll have every single one, all 31, covered for you. Cannot wait. We are just 2 days away from March as we record this. I'm going to sleep tonight, and that'll probably be the last time I sleep until April. So nothing better. All right, so we got a lot to get to, so let's get right into it. Week that was, highlight the good. Start off on a positive note. I'll throw 2 quick ones out. I got to give credit to Chris Collins, what he's doing with Northwestern, how well they're still playing despite all the injuries. Like he's just done a tremendous job with that team. It's not the easiest situation. And then I got to give a shout out to Owe for Kentucky, that second half in front of all the boos and jeers. Incredible finish to that game, including the game winner. He was great for Kentucky, which picks up a road win, but still can't cover on the road. That's problematic. But Owe was incredible in that second half. Greg, I'll go to you. What do you want to highlight as far as the good from the week that was?
Yeah, I got my eye on 2 coaches who have been unapologetically themselves, playing full character actor here. Rick Pitino and Tom Izzo have basically stuck middle fingers up to the new era of college basketball, doubled and tripled down on doing it the old school way, what they've known has worked for 20 years. And here they are, St. John's about to win an outright Big East title, rolling through a bunch of even road games that could be meaningless and just finding a way to get it done. With defense, without shooting, neither one of these teams can shoot, but athleticism and defense everywhere for St. John's. And then Michigan State, I think what they've done in the last 4 games is sensational. I mean, the schedule was a gauntlet. We questioned how good they were all of December and January. And to just spit out a 4-0 stretch at Illinois, at home against Purdue, who was reeling and needed a win, and then at Michigan, who was tied with you in the standings, at Maryland, who's playing for a share of the Big Ten title still, to go 4-0 in that stretch, and really none of those games be all that dicey late. Maryland got dicey thanks to a fluky turnover, but good Lord, Michigan State led the entire second half in that game. It's wildly impressive. Jace Richardson's emergence has been unreal for that team. He looks like a lottery pick, and it's reshaped how I view the Spartans as we approach the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, ugly game, but incredibly entertaining in College Park. Gillespie can't take that shot. That's the shot you get. Every college kid takes with 2 seconds on the clock, right? You can get that shot at any time. And it was Todd, like, go to the hole, get it to Queen. But, I mean, obviously it's a fluke thing that happened, but incredible shot by Holloman in a March moment a couple of days before March, and a huge win for Sparty, which now is, 4 quad 1 wins, 4 ranked wins in a row. They've definitely turned it on. And Richardson just raises their ceiling because the depth is great. And we've seen that in this stretch, is that they wear teams down, and their second halves have been incredible. But as far as, like, I still was a kind of a Michigan State seller because, yeah, all that depth is great, but you didn't really have a go-to guy that's going to get you buckets and, can end scoring droughts. And Richardson has turned into that. He's like sneakily turning into a potential first-round draft pick with the way he's playing.
Mocked 10th overall in the latest Bleacher Report mock draft this week.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't really pay attention to that stuff that closely, but that doesn't surprise me. He's been incredible, and more minutes for him just raises the ceiling for their offense. And Maryland, they get like the thing that scares me about Maryland, and we have a Final Four future on them. Like their starting five is incredible. They have no depth, and that's scary if they get into foul trouble. If there's any injury, they just get nothing, absolutely nothing from their bench. But I mean, definitely a strong starting five, one of the better ones in the country, but just absolutely no depth. The polar opposite of Michigan State in that sense. Calabrese, what do you want to highlight?
Well, first, thoughts and prayers out to SVP. What a brutal way to lose as a Maryland fan, and then immediately have to recap the game and the shot. But he handled it as he always does, a consummate professional. With March right around the corner, this is my favorite time of year when I get the question, like, who are the Cinderellas I should care about? And the reason why I want to highlight these two teams, they're not going to get any national buzz because they're stacking wins against teams outside of the Ken Pom Top 150. All their games are on ESPN+. But two teams here that I want to mention before we get into conference preview season, tournament preview season, I should say, which is Drake and McNeese. Drake, I mean, their special sauce, I think it starts with the coaching. Ben McCollum, for people who are unfamiliar with the hire, I would say basically everyone outside of Des Moines had no idea who this guy was, but a 4-time national champion at the D2 level. He comes in for a team that historically has been very good. They've underperformed time and time again in the Big Dance, but they've just stacked wins in the Valley. And he picks up where they left off. They play slow. They play that snail's pace. They're top 40 in half-court offensive efficiency. They run the pick and roll incredibly well. And no team in the country allows fewer transition buckets than the Bulldogs. So they can be a really prickly team if they're on the 10-11 line against a team that lives and dies with their transition. And of true point guards in the whole country, per Evan Mia, in the mid-major ranks at least, a top 5 player is Bennett Sturtz. He's been incredible this year. He's had games where he scored over 30. He's had games where he's had 12 or more assists, 10 or more rebounds, 5 steals. The guy can impact the game in so many ways. So Drake is a team. I know Stuck and I have been on the wrong side of them in the field of 64 or the round of 64 a couple times, and it's been brutal beats, late game melts. But I think I'm back in on Drake. I can't help myself. And then McNeese.
Well, it's a completely different team this year.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, just literally overhauled. It's like just a D2. The craziest thing, yeah, I mean, Drake, they could lose to anybody, but they could also, but in the tournament, they're going to be, a lower seed. And that's a scary team to play because they're going to grind the shit out of the game. And they're just going to work for good shots on offense. They run beautiful offense. And yeah, Sturtz, do you want to hear a crazy stat? Sturtz is averaging over 40 minutes per game against D1 teams this year. 40.2 minutes per game because he basically plays every minute. And they've gone to a couple overtime games. That, by the way, if you're wondering if that's ever happened, it has. It's happened 7 times. The last time it happened, every other time was in the 80s. The only other time it happened, Vonteego Cummings for Pitt in 97, and someone for Albany like 20 years ago. That's it. Starts averaging over 40 minutes. And then his running mate, Scary's averaging, I think, 38.5 minutes per game. They're 1-2 in minutes per game in the country. Pretty wild. But yeah, Drake will just grind the game down, be super low possessions. They're going to work for their shot. Won't be a fun team to play for sure. And then who else you wanted to highlight?
McNeese. You would think with Shahada Wells moving on that Will Wade would at least have 1 year where they were good, but not really a March Madness threat. That's just not the case. Every time they played up this year, they have these losses that make you think like they only lost by 8 to Bama. They lost by 4 to Liberty, 3 to Mississippi State. This team is just, it's a pick your poison situation offensively on any given night. They got 4 guards that surround Shoemate. And Shoemate's he started over 100 games in his career, so he has all this experience. But their defense may even be better than it was last year, which is incredible. They turn teams over on more than 19% of their possessions, which is 11th in the entire country. So McNeese is another team that I'm circling and excited to talk about, come next month.
Yeah. I worry a little bit about, I mean, they're depending on the right matchup. Yeah, they could definitely pull an upset or two. Definitely a scary team. By the way, getting back to St. John's, shout to Butler for just incessantly running the cover plays in the final minute, going for layups instead of the three. But I was on Butler. I said earlier this week, I said, this is a bad matchup for St. John's, like, because they remind me just like Villanova is, because Villanova defensive rebounds, and then they'll spread teams out and can shoot. And that's kind of like the formula, because you just have to keep St. John's off the offensive glass. They'll go through a scoring drought. And then the only way you're scoring on them is you have to spread them out and shoot. Butler didn't make their threes, but they were in that game. Pitino, in an interview the day before, said Butler is a bad matchup because they remind him of Villanova. So I was pleased to hear Pitino say that too. But that's kind of what the team that you're looking for. If St. John's is going to get upset, it's a team that can keep them off the offensive glass and can spread them out and shoot. But yeah, St. John's has been on quite a roll. And Pitino definitely was resting some guys a bit more in that game. He knows that, they have bigger fish to fry, and they've kind of been dealing with some injuries, something to note as we head down the home stretch. All right, let's get to the bad. Greg, message me. The bad, we already talked about this last episode, but message me on Slack your address. I owe you a Duke shirt for that ass whooping. Although Illinois got back on track. They just looked healthier. We'll see. It was Iowa. But Iowa's the perfect team to play. Like, if you need a get-right game, like, just to see the ball go through the hoop. And so we'll see if that translates down the stretch. They're very hard to judge because of all the illnesses. It's like, how much was it their play? How much was it the illnesses and viruses? But it had to be just good to have a game where, I mean, they shot, I think, only like 32% for third. That's all they need to shoot for the offense to be good. They can't keep shooting 20%. So we'll see. But Iowa's a great team to play. If you're in a slump, you want to play that defense. So we'll see if Illinois can carry over that momentum as the competition increases. They get Michigan and Purdue to close out the regular season. The bad, I'm going to say I got to go with Shedrick for Texas. You got to be kidding me. And DJ Wagner, too. DJ Wagner win the game, makes the first free throw. The announcer says it's like riding a bike, him at the line. And, of course, he misses the second and goes to overtime where dogs go to die. And Trey Johnson doing everything he possibly can. I think he scored 39 points to get the cover. And he goes in, gets a layup. They go down 2 with 7 seconds. I'm fine. Like, I have 4.5 and 5. And Shedrick tugs a jersey, and it's called a flagrant. And, of course, Adu's like a 40% free throw shooter, makes both. And Arkansas wins by 5. You knew the Texas shot wasn't going in at the end. So, F you, Texas. That was absolutely painful. Greg, what do you got for the bad?
I loved watching Rodney Terry battle out John Calipari closing offense in the final 3 minutes, and that's a great segue into my rant of the week.
Well, they just had one play. Texas only ran one play, and it almost worked because Trey Johnson is that good.
It's got me thinking when we talk NBA draft, like Trey Johnson's the consensus 5th or 6th prospect in this draft. If you look that good in a Rodney Terry offense, like, we may look back a decade from now, like, how did this guy not go second overall in this draft? But I could not believe that North Carolina leaked that Hubert Davis signed an extension in December this week. First of all, what is that PR move? Like, this has been under wraps for 2 months, and now we waited for them to go on a 4-game winning streak against Syracuse, NC State, Virginia, and Florida State to try and rally the fan base around this guy. I can't process that he even signed an extension, first of all. Second of all, that they would announce it in this way. We don't have to pretend that incompetent coaches are competent, okay? We're doing the same thing with Villanova. As Calabrese noted earlier this year, Villanova fans are smarter than that. They're groaning when their head coach is announced, and he's about to save his job because Eric Dixon's sensational, and he can take them from 13 points down to Seton Hall to a 5-point victory. That's impressive. Tip your cap. These coaches are disasters, whether it ends this season or 2 seasons from now. There's a lot of guys like Kyle Neptune and Hubert Davis that just do not deserve to save their jobs in mediocre conferences, racking up wins against horrible teams. And look at Indiana as the case study for this, okay? They announced that Mike Woodson's done a month ago. If anything, their team has gotten better since then. They've gone from the wrong side of the bubble to the right side of the bubble, and they're going to hire a competent coach this offseason and hopefully get the program back on track. I wish that programs like North Carolina and Villanova would take notice of that.
How long is his extension?
It was 2 years. It's through 2030 now. So in essence, it doesn't change all that much, but they're just trying to get a positive PR spin to rally the fan base around him.
Jeff Capel signed an extension through 2032. That does not look great. What's next in the land of what's I guess with the way things are going, you're going to have Steve Forbes. He's probably going to get an extension now.
Oh my God.
That's the way things are trending in the ACC. Wake corpse. Wake and Pitt. The ACC tournament, I've never looked forward less to an ACC tournament in my life. You have all the it's like, we get Va Tech versus Cal in the first round. It's like, I can get behind Clemson, Louisville. That'll be a good semi, and then like one of those teams against Duke will be fun. But geez, there's gonna be a lot of bad basketball played. Oh, bad for me was I had NC State. I bought into what NC State was doing with the new lineup, and they got embarrassed at Syracuse, which is hard to do. They're now 0-11 on the road. Christ. Time for a Keats extension. Calabrese, what do you got?
Yeah, last night, let me see. I had a 3-leg parlay. This has never happened to me. All 3 legs came down to the final possession. UConn, some of them I got home. Like I had 13.5 in some spots, 14 in others. They're up 19 with a minute to go. They give up a 3. Then they throw up a bad shot. They almost get an offensive rebound. Then they turn it over. Georgetown lays it in to make it 14 at the end. Loyola Bucknell had to block 3 shots in the last 5 seconds to be able to hold on to cover by a half point. And then my USC upstate play, I was really hoping to get that one home. They were not covering for 90% of the second half. They make it all the way back to 19. And then High Point has a guy throw in a meaningless 3-pointer on the last shot of the game. So that's brutal. That was a little appetizer for me for what's probably coming in March. You already brought it up, Stuck, with Texas. I'm going to go further beyond that one game. The fact that we have a bubble in which they're taken seriously. They're 5-10 in the SEC. What are we doing to have a team like they're 2-6 in their last 8, and that includes losing by 15 to South Carolina. Call me old-fashioned, but when you lose to a team that's 0-13 in your conference by 15 points, that should be it. I don't care what happens the rest of the way, but the bubble is so weak and there's so much preference given to power conference teams that ESPN still projects them as a 39% chance to make the tournament. For perspective, UC San Diego, the darling of this podcast, the Tritons, 25% chance at large odds. That's just ridiculous. Give me 2 from the Mountain West. Give me 2 from the A-10. Give me 2 from the Big West. Anything except for the garbage of the bottom of the barrel in these power conferences, and Texas is it. I mean, Trey Johnson is phenomenal, but if they can't win when he drops 39 points, he's given off, 07 KD vibes, on the 40 acres down there. It's like they're wasting this, incredible player, the second best freshman in program history. So I've had enough of the Longhorns. I'm with you, horns down.
Yeah, with that said, I mean, everything that's happening in the SEC they're going to get 14 teams in. Although if Oklahoma beat Kentucky, they might be on the wrong side now. But I probably will be on Texas again on Saturday. Georgia off that huge win. Their offense on the road is dreadful, absolutely dreadful. So if we get a good number on Texas, I'll definitely be looking at the horns. Let's get to our futures roundtable. We'll have a normal show next week with a bunch of conference tournaments, so we might add one more. I'll also recap them all next week. If you don't have any that we bet and want to add any, a couple you can get much better prices out there too. I'll start off. I gave mine away earlier this week on the episode when Calabrese brought up Clemson. I'm gonna go Clemson Final Four 18-1 out there. I think this should be 14, 15-1. This is a top 15 team since January 1st. I think you could argue they are a top 15 team in the country overall. This is a generous price for a team that, hits all of the qualifiers for like the team that you think can make a run. They're 16th in overall adjusted offensive efficiency, 28th in defense, one of the most experienced rosters in the country. They're not going to allow anything in transition. The one area I worry about them is teams that can offensive rebound, but this team can shoot, and they made a run last year with this core to the Elite Eight, ran into a Bama team that made a bunch of threes. I think they're better this year, and I think their defense is much better. That was kind of the weak area last year, but you could pick last year. You could pick on Girard. That's not the case now. And, they can put pressure on the ball. They can turn teams over, something they couldn't do last year. PJ Hall was incredible offensively, but Victor Locken has been awesome offensively, and there's no drop-off defensively with him. Wiggins has improved. The Hunters have taken a next step. And I'm buying into Jaden Zachary. He's playing really well. And then you have Scheifelen doing all of the dirty work on the glass. So I like this team. We've seen ACC teams. The ACC looks terrible. They get in, they can make a run. This team can play with anyone. We've seen them beat Duke, look at what Duke's doing to everybody else. We, have seen them beat Kentucky. Their only losses since mid-November, they lost 3 games in overtime, and then they lost on the road at Louisville. I'm a believer in this team, and I think this is too good of a price to pass up. So Clemson treated this well last year with the future, able to get some equity out of that. I'm going to go back to the well here with a 18-1, although I see a couple brackets projected with them playing UC San Diego. My whole selection Sunday is going to be, first of all, UC San Diego needs to get in, or it's going to be ruined. And then it's going to be based, who do they put them up against? Who would I want them up against? Just like Marquette. Give me them against Marquette. I worry a little bit about Marquette's athleticism, but I don't know. I get my red flag is I look at projected brackets and then get mad at the hypothetical matchups that never happen. So I'll stop. Clemson 18-1. Greg, what do you got?
I'm going back to the well. I want BYU Final Four on the card, boys. I think it was 40-1 last week. It's cut in half, almost 22-1 right now. Is the best I see it at.
We messed up. The refs.
Yeah, the refs killed us. If the coin flip call, if that call doesn't happen, I mean, look. I was going to make the point. I thought BYU outplayed Arizona in that game. Arizona shot 46% from 3 and was trailing almost the entire second half. Anytime Arizona made a little run, BYU responded. So in some sense, I'm almost happy to feel validated that BYU went and played that well. But yeah, if that phantom foul call doesn't exist, Arizona wins and the odds are not nuked like they are. But look, Torvik still loves this team, 16th. Per Bart Torvik, it's still an analytical anomaly compared to where Ken Pom and Evan Mia has this team. I lean with Torvik. I think this looks like a team that's playing like one of the top 16 to 20 teams in college basketball. You can get them priced better than Illinois, Marquette, UCLA, Michigan, all those teams. I think BYU has significantly more upside than right now, given what they've done in the last really month and a half since they changed this lineup. Yegor Demon just focused solely on facilitating, and Richie Saunders being an absolute dog go-to scorer. It's just worked. You don't have to worry about certain guys like we mentioned with Maryland, where if somebody's cold, they don't have alternatives. Like they've got Cannon Catchings who can hit 5 threes and win you a game in a role where if he doesn't make his first 2 threes, he doesn't even check into the game. They're deep. They're good inside. They don't really beat themselves. And as you mentioned last week, Stuck, when they get to the Sweet 16, if they get there, they're going to have to pick off some teams that are some of the quote-unquote elite teams in college basketball. They play a brand of basketball that facilitates that. They shoot a bunch of threes. They're efficient from outside. So I'm in on this team. I'm going to somehow get them on the card and keep peppering this until we do.
Yeah, my only pushback is we could have got 40-1 last week, and then Still worry a little bit about them on the road, but going to Tucson has to give them confidence, and that is definitely a feather in their cap for sure. The one weird thing with BYU, and this could work in our favor. I mean, the bracket's a crapshoot. You never know where there's going to be upsets. But BYU can't play on Sundays, so like they could be like an 8, but then get put as a 7, or like an 8 that gets put as a 10. Do you know what I mean? Because just of how the regions play out. I think that they're trending more towards like a 6 right now, but like they could get hurt by seeding or helped based on just how everything plays out, and because they can't play on Sundays. And it's not just you can't just take into account the first weekend. You got to take into account the second weekend, and so that's just something to keep in mind. You can't predict if that's going to help or hurt, but just something to note. Calabrese, what do you got?
I know this one's been floating around for a couple of weeks, but Duke and Auburn against the field, Tigers and Blue Devils, if you pair them up, if either win the national title, you get plus 160 on it. And I'm going to make this pretty simple. If you go into the Ken Pom Almanac, if you flip through all the pages, start with this year. So Auburn's net rating, 36.92, Duke's 38.78. Dating all the way back to 1997, every team north of 36 has either made the Final Four, played for the national title, or won the national title. I've seen enough from Auburn. They're my pick to win the national title. Really, for the last 2 months, I got them at 18-1 earlier in the year. I'm not getting off that train. They have so many different ways they can beat you. We can go on and on about how great this team that Bruce Pearl has assembled is this year. And Duke, I just feel like they have a very, very high floor because of that defense. So the likelihood of them losing before, let's call it the Elite Eight, in my opinion, is very low. So with that being said, you guys are throwing out some interesting long shots. I'll pat myself on the back. The St. Mary's one was there. That one already cashed the West Coast Conference ticket. I think it was at the same price. I know that the futures portfolio, we're looking for something a little bit spicier, but this is one that I'm going to be kicking myself if I don't take by the second weekend when they're both there. They have really good paths to the Final Four. I think there's, I won't throw a percentage on it because these are the kind of hypotheticals that I think kind of defy mathematics, but I think there's a really good chance that both these teams make the Final Four and are put on opposite sides of the bracket. So for that reason, I think anything north of plus 150 is good. Plus 165 is what I'm bringing to the table today.
Okay, we'll vote, and then I'll get Greg's thoughts, and I'll share my thoughts on that. 1 for Clemson, 2 for BYU, 3 for Duke Auburn versus the field. 3, 2, 1. Wow, it's a split. Greg went with Duke Auburn. I went with BYU. And Calabrese went with Clemson. It's up to me to break the tie. The last tie that we had, who did I default to? What did I default to?
Is that where you gave yourself A&M finally?
No. I think I got the win last split.
Which was it?
Was it Maryland? Was that too long ago?
That was Alabama national title.
Yeah.
Which I don't like. They could win it, but I don't trust their defense. So I can't go to Greg again on the tie. I'm going to be selfish. I'm going Clemson. Here's the reason I can't go Duke Auburn. I priced it out today. I make it 2-1. And so I can't take plus 165. This is all, I get how historically good both those teams are, but I will say this is the deepest field we've ever seen. The bubble is pretty weak, but from like 1 to the 8 seed line, as deep as we've ever seen. There's like 6, 7 teams that you could argue should be 1 seeds. Like that, just this field is so deep that that's just where I'm at 2-1. Greg, you voted for this one. I'm curious to get your thoughts on Duke Auburn versus the field.
I did. I think largely to Mike's point, I've been sort of asking for like a horse here, and I tried to give us that with Alabama, and then I'm with you, Stuck. It just the way they performed in that Auburn game just did not inspire. So I still think there's a little bit of upside there, but I want something we feel super confident is going to go deep. At minimum, one of these two teams is going to be in the Final Four. I'm with Calabrese. They're historically great. Yes, it's a strong season across the board, but these are going to be put on a tee on opposite sides from each other on a pedestal, given everything they need to get where they need to get as long as they stay healthy. Now, the one concern would be Proctor's not healthy. He banged knees, and luckily it's just a bruise and not something worse right now. I kind of want to see that, but man, I think this was like plus 140 a couple weeks ago. It's honestly flipped the other direction. I think this might be the best we get for those two. Why not? And honestly, I don't love Clemson the way you do. I don't think it's bad value by any means, but that was part of it as well. I wasn't looking to itch myself into a Clemson ticket.
All right, well, maybe we'll add the horse pick next week. I don't think that's going to move much, and then we can get more insight into Duke injury situation. Let's talk a little Atlantic Sun here. This will start on Sunday. The higher seeds host. We have 2 games that are already known on Sunday. Something to keep in mind if you're betting those games is they're not actually at the higher seeds. You have the 1 seed who they will play. Those teams play on their home court on Sunday, and the 2 seed who they're going to play on their home court on Sunday because they're going to play on Monday. But from there on out, the higher seeds host. This is an offensive league. There's lots of 3-pointers. There's lots of 3-point makes. There's a lot of variance as a result. Lipscomb is the favorite here. Seeing around minus 155. They have a great 4-out offense. Ognacevic is a baller, and they have shooters, elite spacing and motion. They lost Faulkner to injury earlier this season, but they make a lot of threes, great offense. Not the most athletic team, which can trouble them in specific matchups, namely against North Alabama, Eastern Kentucky. North Alabama's been the best team. Very athletic. They're rim hunters. They don't turn it over. They do lack height, but they're great on the offensive glass. Lane and Fields are great. They're 15-1 at home, 7-8 on the road. They are vulnerable against zones. You'll see some zones in this league. And they did lose to both Florida Gulf Coast and Queens. And they give up a lot of threes. And they're weak at the rim, which is troubling against Florida Gulf Coast. And they give up threes, which is troubling against Queens. My problem is when I just look at this league off the bat is I don't know who's going to win that Queens-Florida Gulf Coast matchup. They split in the regular season. Probably comes down to Queens' 3-point shooting. They were 5 of 26 in the loss, 12 of 29 in the win. Queens has been good on the road, though. If you look at their splits, and Florida Gulf Coast has been good at home. So I just don't have a ton of confidence. But both have some paths to give North Alabama problems. But North Alabama has been so good at home this year. I don't think Lipscomb is completely immune to being upset before the title either. Minus 150, minus 160, no value. I make them close to even money. North Alabama, I wanted 3-1. There's plus 250 out there, which I would maybe think about, especially if Lipscomb gets picked off. You'd love to have that ticket, but if they don't, you're going to be getting plus 300, plus 330 in the conference championship game, which will be at Lipscomb. It's also worth noting that Queens is not eligible for the NCAA tournament. If they win Lipscomb, because of the tiebreaker and the 1 seed, they would go to the NCAA tournament. Queens, good rebounders, get up a ton of threes. Colomario, the Fresno transfer, he's their best offensive player. Backcourt isn't great. They do have a 7-footer in Wilson to protect the rim, but they do turn it over a little bit too much and don't force turnovers. I don't think anyone has a shot from the bottom here. Maybe North Florida. North Florida cannot defend the rim at all. Their D is awful, but they're the birds of Trey. They shoot a ton of threes, and they don't turn it over. So they have the highest 3-point rate in the country. So, yeah. But they play Austin Peay in the first round. It does take away the 3 well. But Peay's not a great 2-point offense, which can't really exploit the North Florida's primary weakness to the fullest. But they did score 97 points on the road in their only meeting and won at North Florida. That's all you need to know about the North Florida defense. The other two teams I'll just mention briefly if you're not familiar with them. Jacksonville, good jump shooters, but they don't take a ton, but they're great offensive rebounders. They have the best defense in the league. It's a weird team, though. They turn it over too much. They're bad from two. They're bad from the line. They can't score at the rim. They also have an injury with their rim protector in pain. I don't know if he's going to be back. McCray, their point guard, runs the show in that offense, but their D kind of runs the show in the league of a lot of offenses. They have the best defense. Eastern Kentucky, they'll press. They have a unique style. They want to force turnovers. They don't turn it over themselves. Devontae Blanton's a stud. Him and Kimball, it's basically just an isolation pick and roll. But Kimball's missed the past few games. I'm not sure of his status. Buttry's the shooter. Myrick's pretty underrated, but they don't get to the rim at all. They can't defend at the rim. Their offense is just all threes and mid-range stuff. They're good on the offensive glass. Interesting league. If I had to take anything, probably North Alabama. They can give Lipscomb problems with their athleticism. It stinks that they didn't get the 1 seed. Calabrese, I'll go to you. What are your thoughts here? Sorry for that ramble.
No, that was great table setting across the board for what has been a fun conference throughout the season, and there's some differential in the way the teams play, so it can make for an entertaining contrast in styles of time. I'm in on 5-2 for North Alabama, and the reason is pretty simple. When you look at their split with Lipscomb, when they're playing 4 out and they're just relentlessly feeding the post in Ognosevich, like in the first game, they had a great game plan. He goes 4 for 12 from the field. He's a non-factor, and they win that game. So that's what I needed to see, because when you look at the advanced metrics, it appears that the Bison are, head and shoulders above everybody else. But North Alabama has already proven it at one point this season. And I think
they swept them last year. They upset them at Lipscomb last year in the tournament. Swept them last year. Also, per Torvik, since January 1st and since February 1st, North Alabama's been the best team in this league. And they've been dominant at home, which is all they need to do to get to Lipscomb.
And sometimes it can be difficult to talk yourself into saying, having to win on another team's floor. Lipscomb was actually the only team in the entire conference with a winning record on the road. But when you look at the top 5 contenders alongside of them, they went 4-4 against those teams. So in my opinion, they're vulnerable. Their price makes it, basically a non-starter. I'm not laying minus 165 to take the favorite here. And I get the best guard in the league on top of everything else. We bang the drum, marches about guard play. Jakari Lane is phenomenal. He's got a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, 20 or more points in 5 of his last 6 games. So he's getting hot at the right time, knockdown 3-point shooter, and he's adept at getting to the line. I think they have all the pieces here. And then when you look at the path against, APSU or North Florida, they swept both. Florida Gulf Coast, it was a game that they took them down to the wire at their place. So I'm not necessarily scared. I will say with North Florida, what's interesting, you talked about how fast they play. They're top 10 in pace nationally. They fire up a million threes. They upset South Carolina and Georgia Tech. So on the high end, when the shots are falling, that's the only scary element for me with North Alabama. I think they get to the title game. And then, just like you, if you're on the Lions, you're hoping that the Bison get, sniped by somebody else. But I still think there's a good chance that they can beat them because they've already done it this year. So I'm going to keep it simple, go with a team that at plus 250, I think there's enough value to talk me into the 2 seed in this tournament.
Yeah, there's like Florida Gulf Coast, Queens. I struggle with that because like Queens, if they're making their threes. But North Alabama has some landmines. Lipscomb, the other interesting part is Jacksonville, Eastern Kentucky. They play in the 4-5. Jacksonville swept Eastern Kentucky during the regular season, but Eastern Kentucky swept Lipscomb. Their athleticism can give Lipscomb issues. And it's weird because Jacksonville does turn it over a bunch, but their defense is really good and just really stymied Eastern Kentucky. They just played, and Jacksonville won 59-55 in that game, and that was without Payne, and Eastern Kentucky was without Kimball. Those are 2 guys to keep an eye on if they're going to be available. But that's a tough one. I just don't know who I really love. Like if I really loved Eastern Kentucky in that game, I might look to take Eastern Kentucky, a flyer in Eastern Kentucky. So this is tough for me. I'm going to shop around. Maybe a good number in North Alabama. What do you got?
25-1 EKU
on Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah, that's my sprinkle. I just don't think they are that far behind the favorites in this league, and I do feel like you're kind of just pulling something out of a hat here. I'll take the team that swept the 1 seed at 25-1. That you try to look at what happened in that Jacksonville game. EKU's not a great shooting team by any means. They shot 45% from the line. They shot 25%, 8 for 32 from 3, lose by 4 to Jacksonville. Like I feel like EKU can handle that. And if you get, it's hard to beat a team 3 times, right? But with how good Blanton is, like he is a guy who can single-handedly win you a game. I think it's a crazy price. When I saw 25-1, I was like, it's worth a shot.
I like it. All right, that's the official recommendation. If you want to go with a more known commodity, maybe North Alabama, shop around. I would love that. I was hoping to get 3-1, but yeah, the long shot. I think you got to go EKU and hope Blanton carries you to glory. All right, let's get to. And by the way, we'll have 30 more conference tournament previews coming up over the next 2 weeks. Let's get to some weekend looks. Let's start on Friday. Greg, I know you got something for Friday. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Big Ten country here. Purdue has been reeling, and we're going on 4 consecutive games of the masses saying, well, this is Purdue's turn to respond and back against the wall. I'm hearing rumors of players-only meetings this week. Of course, you're expecting a focused effort from the Boilermakers. But guess what? UCLA is a good basketball team. This is a team that has been really good in the biggest spots on their schedule this year. They have 4 wins against KenPom top 12 opponents going back to the non-conference. I trust Mick Cronin against good teams, and I think there's a scout out on this Purdue team of how to beat them that plays right into UCLA's hands. You got to force turnovers. Braden Smith has 6 turnovers in his last 2 games. He looks extremely worn down from playing 40 minutes every single game. UCLA's got a bunch of guards they can throw at him, kind of keep a revolving door going, keep everybody fresh. And they're the 4th best turnover forcing defense in all of college basketball. Then you think, how does UCLA want to score? Well, they like to score inside. Tyler Bilodeau is kind of a 6'9" center that can struggle with size. Purdue has no size inside. Going back to January 1st, Purdue has the worst 2-point percentage defense in college basketball. They're dead last in the category. It's not just a problem, it's a hemorrhage at this point. There's nothing they can do. I just trust Mick Cronin in this spot. They're going to be catching at least 5.5 points here. I'll take a shot on UCLA, who I think's been a lot better than Purdue lately.
If they want some film cut-ups on how to play 2-point defense, I can give them Mississippi Valley State because they are above them, and I've watched them play and look a little bit better in beating Arkansas Pine Bluff. Greg, the one question I have for you, any concern about the air travel? Obviously, Mick Cronin has made a meal out of saying, oh, boo-hoo, we got a new conference and we had to cash these huge checks and now we have to fly across the country. This being their only good road win outside of the West Coast has been Indiana, a 4-point win. Does that concern you at all? Do you think it's maybe he's trying to play a little motivational element inside his locker room and have them be fired up for a game like this?
You know, I think Mick is a narrative spinner. And when his team had lost 4 straight, including a blowout loss at home to Michigan and a neutral to North Carolina, that was kind of the narrative, right? It's easy to blame it on travel. I don't think it's affected many other teams in this league like that. We've seen teams go east and west and find success. This is just a really good matchup for UCLA. So I'm going to take the Bruins.
I'm going to go against you, Greg. Let's call it 5, and then I'll wait to send you a shirt. The shirts will cross out, or actually, we'll just keep a tally to the end.
Does it upgrade to a sweatshirt? Does it go to short sleeve to long sleeve?
So when do I get a bomber jacket, Stuck? What's the price range?
We could. We'll talk about exchanges too, but we can do a shirt bet on this. UCLA doesn't try to score at the rim. They're like 330th in near proximity attempt rate. A lot of mid-range. Like Purdue's much better defending there. I don't trust UCLA on the road. They're 350th away from home per Haslametrics. I agree with your point. Maybe Purdue is wearing down. That I am a bit worried about. But this is like Purdue was just laying a week and a half ago, 5.5 at home to Wisconsin 3 games ago. Wisconsin is significantly better than UCLA in my opinion. I'm gonna take Purdue in a home rally spot. Now you could say, look, their past couple have been home rally spots, but I didn't like their matchups the past couple. I faded them in Indiana. I'm gonna back Purdue here. Little shirt bet. Calabrese, you got anything for Friday?
Not for Friday, but I got 3 on Saturday if you want to hop into it.
I'll throw out Kent State on Friday night. Is there a line out here for this game? Let's see. Kent State's found their offense. And, there's a 4 out there. That's kind of what I wanted. Kent State has been, let me pull it up, since February 1st, Kent State's been the best team in this league. And they've found their offense. And early in the year, they lost Safford, who's important to them. And they've kind of figured out their roles around him. Sullinger's playing with more confidence. They got blown out in their home court earlier this year to Akron. They lost on an improbable accidental foul to Akron in the conference final last year. Great rivalry here. Give me the points with Kent State. Their offense is playing so much better than it was earlier in the season. And by the way, I don't know what it is, but Kent State, they stink at home. I don't know what it is. I think they got to be like probably top 10 away from home metric. If you look at Haslam metrics, I almost guarantee it. But this team's playing really well. They have a couple guys who were struggling early on, but guys like Sumlin, Barnett have really come on, and this team's finally making shots. I like them. Good spot here Friday night. I think this game goes down to the wire against Akron.
The Zips, it's clear they're going through the motions, at least on the defensive ends. They gave up 80 plus, I think, to Ohio and Ball State. Those are mediocre teams. I think they're just on cruise control right now. So I was almost pulling the trigger on Kent State as well.
Let's go to Saturday. Greg, what do you got for Saturday?
Saturday, I'm going to turn to Tennessee here. Tennessee, very good home team this year. It feels like, in general, the masses have sort of decided Tennessee is icky. I've been a part of that at times. I mean, offensively, this is not the most fun team to watch, but as they have been all season, it's really just dependent on what version of Chaz Lanier you're getting. And my eyes tell me that Chaz Lanier's back to his November form, where he was one of the best guards in the country. Really struggled in the beginning of conference play, but he's heating up at the right time. I mean, Texas A&M left him way too open last week, but even against LSU and Vanderbilt, he's been efficient from 3, which is the most important thing for Tennessee. I just feel that this Tennessee team is capable of beating anybody at home, and Alabama has been a lot worse on the road than they've been at home this season. Their defense, which is 9th nationally in adjusted defensive efficiency at home, is 106th on the road. For whatever reason, they just can't get it done on that end. On the flip side, Tennessee's offense jumps up nearly halfway from 55th on the road to 26th nationally in adjusted offensive efficiency. And you top this off with Rick Barnes kind of owning Nate Oates in the last 2 years when both of these programs have been extremely healthy. Rick Barnes 3-0 against Nate Oates. He swept the Tide last season. I think this is a really good spot for a Tennessee team that is rolling right now. Alabama won a couple straight as well. Maybe a little slip up before they get down to Florida and Auburn in the final week of the regular season.
I like it. I'll stay in the MAC. I like Ohio on Saturday. I think it's a good spot. They're off a bad loss. They have revenge from a game they were right there with Miami of Ohio, and they didn't have A.J. Clayton, who's their best player. He's now back. Ohio wants to run, 99th percentile transition rate. Miami, terrible transition D, 79th percentile frequency allowed, 29th in efficiency. And Miami of Ohio is a jump shooting team, but Ohio does a good job taking away outside shots, and I think they've been unlucky with who's made them this year during league play. I just don't like the Miami defense when they aren't turning teams over, and Ohio doesn't turn it over. And these two teams are Jekyll and Hyde, home and away. Ohio's been great at home all year. If you look at the splits on Torvik, 103rd in the country at home, 225th on the road. That's a massive split. Ohio, 39% from 3 at home, 31 on the road. Miami of Ohio, 136th at home, 199th on the road. They shoot 42.5% from 3 at home, 32% on the road. I like Ohio. Small favorite at home is what I'm hoping for. Calabrese, what else you got?
I'll go Grand Canyon as a short favorite at Seattle. They handled Seattle in Phoenix by 9 last month. If they win out and Utah Valley drops one, they're going to get a share of the WAC regular season title. And really it comes down to the fact that Grant Foster is back to being that menace on the defensive end that he was during that March Madness run last year. He was a game plan wrecker for the Lopes. He's got 12 stocks in his last 3 games. And Ray Harrison has found his groove offensively. He's got his confidence back. He's putting up more shots. He's scoring the basketball. So I really like what they're bringing to the table at this point in a game that's still incredibly meaningful to them. But the big thing for the Lopes is turnovers. They give it away way too much, nearly 14 a game. Their last loss, by the way, because they're 9-1 in their last 10, they turned it over 22 times against Cal Baptist. But they've since avenged that loss. And against Seattle, Seattle can put pressure on you and turn you over, but they're also really sloppy with the ball, just like GCU. So I think it's going to kind of be a wash in that regard. I think this will be, a single possession spread, so I'd play it up to laying 3. But Seattle, historically in the WAC, has been a better home team than they are this year. They're 4-6 against the closing number on their home floor here in 2025. So I'll go ahead with the Antelopes getting hot at the right time.
Is Grant Foster going to play? I haven't.
I believe so. I mean, that obviously will have a huge impact. I've had the worst injury luck with bets I'm giving out 2 and 3 days ahead of time in the last month. So yes, as always, make sure to adjust for that. My next pick, hopefully the team that I'm going with is getting healthier. At least their coach is saying so. I think we're on the same one there, Stuck. I like Iowa State. Revenge after that insane loss to Arizona. They're going to be a short favorite here at Hilton. Losing at McHale, they're up 3. They're up 3 with 3 seconds left. Love hits a 3/4 court shot. They go to overtime. They lose. But according to Coach Otts, Key Gilbert is coming back. He practiced this morning. He said they're incredibly optimistic he's going to play. And what does he do being back on the floor? Well, it gets to move Jones back into his 6-man role, which is where he thrives, best 6-man in the entire country, spacing with Momcilovic as well. All the things we've been talking about for really the last 6 weeks. It's just the pieces haven't all gone together at the same time. So I'm hopeful that we're buying as low as they're going to go for really the rest of the season. I think if they were healthy and they had beaten Houston in that last game last week, this would probably be them minus 5 or 6 in a spot like this. But instead, I get an Arizona team that I still have questions about. I still think that Love can shoot them out at any game, and it can, they can get snowed under in terms of another team going on a big run when they have their droughts. So I'm going to go ahead with the Clones at home.
Yeah, I think this is a spot of the weekend. Gilbert back also, he can handle the ball. He can play point, and Lipsey's dealing with that, that arm and hand injury, wrist, turns it over a bit too much. Their turnover has been an issue for Iowa State lately, but Arizona doesn't turn you over, which I think is big in this particular matchup. Iowa State, has revenge from that game in Tucson where Love hit the 60-footer to force overtime. Iowa State should have won that game, and they were without Momcilovic, and they shot sub 30% from 3. Arizona cannot shoot on the road. They're shooting 28% from 3 on the road. They're also holding teams to 30% on the road, which I don't believe in because they give up a super high volume. Iowa State is money from 3 at home, close to 39%. They can also limit Arizona on the offensive glass. They can get buckets in the post, and they can limit them in transition as well, which is always important against Arizona. Iowa State has lost 1 game this year when fully healthy. 1. At the buzzer on a neutral court to Auburn. That's it. All the other and Jones was dealing with pneumonia the past 2 games. Says walking pneumonia, looks like he should be closer to full strength here. So yeah, I think this is a good spot to get Iowa State at home. Major revenge in Hilton. I think it's a good matchup as well. Greg, what else you got?
All right, I'm going to move to the SEC. Did you guys ever play old school Xbox where you could get the red ring of death?
Yes, sure.
Guys,
yeah, of course.
Worst thing, right? That's Florida. Once a month, they'll get the red ring of death, and then they'll just take it in the shop, fix it, come out, and then they'll work perfectly fine for a month. And then all of a sudden, they'll come out and have the red ring of death again. They play a bad half once a month. That's what happens. And when they play a bad half, they immediately play a great half. And they respond and rattle off some really impressive performances. It happened in the first half against Georgia. They came back from down 24 points and nearly won that game. It ultimately wasn't enough. But as soon as they lost that game, circled this immediately. I want every part of Florida in a bounce back spot. They beat Tennessee by 30 after losing to Kentucky earlier this year. Beat Texas by 24 after losing to Missouri. They've just been awesome. They've won by double figures every time they're coming off a loss. They're playing Texas A&M, and I know that's your boy Stuck. I like A&M too. But they just don't look the part right now. They're supposed to at least be a little better around the rim. Otherwise, if they're not hot from outside, like I just don't know what you do with a team that's shooting 40% from 2-point range at home against Vanderbilt. That killed them against Mississippi State, too. 36% from 2-point range. I don't trust them inside right now. Florida's front court is healthy. They got Handlockton back. Condon and Handlockton coming off the bench. Like, they're so deep in the front court. I think they're going to put up a fight, have an inspired performance here, and honestly cruise to a blowout win at home.
I don't have a strong feel on that game, so I'll trust you there. Cowboys, you got one more?
I do. I like Utah State in a coin flip at Colorado State. This is an important game for them because I think if they win, they basically wrap up their at-large bid, and it takes a little bit of pressure off of them in the Mountain West Conference Tournament. Colorado State just hasn't fared well when they played up against better teams than their schedule. They're swept by New Mexico. They lost by 8 at Utah State, despite a monster game from Nick Clifford. They also lost handily to VCU and Ole Miss. And when you look at Utah State coming into this game, they're coming off of a loss. I think it's a bounce back spot. They couldn't make a foul shot against Boise, a Boise team who shot 40% from 3 at home. I still view this as also a bounce back spot for Martinez. That was one of his worst games of the whole season. And in terms of possessions and second chance opportunities, Colorado State cannot turn you over and they can't get offensive boards. So they're so reliant on those jumpers falling. Utah State, meanwhile, can turn you over a lot. They were +5 in the turnover margin in their first meeting. And I mentioned they won by 8. They missed 13 foul shots in that game. They're not a great foul shooting team. They're just at a little bit below the national average. But to miss 13 is just ridiculous. So I think there's a higher likelihood of them winning by north of 2 possessions than them necessarily losing this game outright. I think Utah State has continually been slept on from a national perspective. And I understand that losing to New Mexico in those 2 games, it kind of took the luster off of this first season in Logan for the new coaching staff. But I still really like this team. I think they're better than Colorado State. And like I said, usually in a spot like this, Clifford can just elevate them and just say, I'm going to play hero ball and go for 25 and 10. He already did that, and it wasn't enough in round 1. Round 2, I think, also goes to the Aggies.
All right, I'm going to go to the SEC. Give me South Carolina at home against Arkansas. South Carolina, I think South Carolina beats Arkansas on Saturday. Number 1, I think no Thiero matters. Thiero, I think, is their best player right now. They're most important when you just look at his overall impact. Yes, they were able to beat Texas at home, a reeling Texas team. But it took overtime, and it took Arkansas shooting 52% from 3. That's not going to happen. This is a terrible shooting team. And this is a team that's super thin rotation right now. They had a huge win over Missouri, go to overtime against Texas. Big Z couldn't even get in the game late because of his back. He had spasms. Like, this team is beat up right now. South Carolina, for all their warts, is they're like, they just follow this pattern. They get trucked on the road, and then they come back home and they play really well. They lost. I mean, you go back to, they lost to Auburn by 3 at home. They lost to Florida at the buzzer by 1 in the game that they should have won. They lost to Mississippi State in overtime at home. They lost to Texas A&M by 4 at home. Ole Miss, they lost by 4 at home. They blow out Texas at home. This team is right. They could easily have 4 or 5 wins at home. Got blown out at Missouri. All the pressure's on Arkansas here. I worry about South Carolina's transition D a little bit, but give me South Carolina to take down Arkansas. Someone's eventually going to make a 3 against Arkansas too. Also look at Wyoming against San Diego State. Home finale for the Pokes. San Diego State off a huge win over New Mexico. They still don't have their best rim protector in Guath, who's hurt. Pokes arguably should have won the first game on the road. You have to shoot threes to beat San Diego State, which Wyoming certainly can do. That's their strength. They can also keep San Diego State off the offensive glass. Turnovers are a worry, but this should be a low-scoring game. Points at a premium. I think there'll be value with Wyoming. San Diego State is just not impressed me over the past 2 months, despite that win over New Mexico. And the last one I'll throw out, I think we might get some value with Cincy against Houston. I mean, Houston's been so lucky just this past weekend. Maybe it's a bit of a letdown, but they played so many teams with injuries. So I think that they're just a little overvalued in the metrics department. Cincy's playing its best offense of the season, top 25 over the past month. Houston's also shooting, I know they're a really good shooting team, but they're 43% from 3 in the month of February. Maybe they get some regression there. Their 2-point offense is still shaky. I get that the offensive boards could be a problem for Cincy, but this will be a slow-paced game, points at a premium. Cincy does take care of the ball. They have multiple ball handlers. It's important against Houston. I think Cincy puts up a fight here. So give me the Bearcats. And then we'll end it with a game on Sunday that I've circled too. I'm hoping that Michigan finally can blow out a team tonight. I cannot have Harper and Bailey go in there and beat them, which would not be great for the spot because Greg likes Illinois. My Illini on Sunday.
You got me. I'm contagious now, Stuck. It's horrible. I'm not proud, but here we are. Listen, I'm going to be in the building for this game on Sunday, and I've been excited as a Michigan basketball fan all year because Illinois has beaten Michigan like 19 straight times, and Juwan Howard's gone. The bad man's gone, and I think Michigan's a better basketball team. Guess what? I hate this. I hate this spot for a bunch of reasons. Michigan's trying to play for a conference title, but they've been playing out of their minds in terms of how they're actually playing to the record. I mean, they are tied for first in a conference that since the middle of January, Torvik says they're the 10th best team in an 18-team league. They're worse than Indiana and Northwestern in their last 10 games.
And they're worse than Illinois, too.
Yeah, they're worse than Illinois, and everybody's out on the Illini, but supposedly loving Michigan. Look, I got to put my money in a wise spot here. It's going to come crashing down for Michigan. You can cut the shooting numbers up, too. Michigan's been as bad at shooting the basketball as Illinois since January 18th. Both these teams are shooting 28% from three. And I don't really trust the fix for Michigan because Roddy Gale and Reuben Jones are not the guys that are going to fix this. They have no depth off the bench. Trey Donaldson looks like a shell of himself. Illinois is one of the only teams in the country that is big enough to actually hang with Michigan down low. They have huge positional size. They're good from 2-point percentage, offense and defense. I think the big question for me is what is Benham Rickhouse's role? That's the reason I spent all of December and January thinking it's a great matchup for Michigan. Well, guess what? Against Iowa, Brad Underwood finally pushed him to the bench, threw him in a 14-minute role, even without Merez Johnson available. He just went all in on Will Riley, who's just better. He's all around better for what Illinois is trying to do on both sides of the ball than trying to force Benham Rickhouse into this volume shooting 3-point role. So
Trey White out of the doghouse too helps.
Right. The personnel tweaks, I think, are finally in the right spot. I think they're finally healthy, and I think it's finally going to trend upward for Illinois. Well, if we get the team we saw at Iowa, I think they are just definitively a better team than what Michigan has been for the last month. So give me the Illini. It hurts my heart, Stuck, but maybe you pass this on to me and I get to blame you.
Yeah, we'll happily take the blame. I like the spot too. If Illinois gets help, like Illinois is going to be. If Illinois is an 8 seed, that sucks for the 1. If they get Johnson back and they get healthy, because Illinois is basically if they were healthy all year, they probably would have been a 3 or a 4. And they have this looming shooting regression on both ends where they'll just hit, they're due to hit 35-40% for a couple games in a row. And over the past 2 months, teams are shooting 44% from 3 against Illinois. It's there's going to be a game, or there's going to be a 3-game stretch where Illinois just gets ridiculous 3-point shooting luck for our futures. Final Four. I hope that happens starting the first day of the tournament. Although Sunday, if I'll be betting on Illinois, but let's end it there. Greg touting Illinois. That'll do it for us. Thanks to Greg and Mike for joining me. Thanks to Tanner. Thanks to our producer, David, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Live show Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. And then the start of many conference tournament previews will begin with a 3-man weave on Sunday. That'll be out Monday morning. And then there's going to be 9 or 10 episodes to follow over the 2 weeks to come. It's the best time of the year. Enjoy it. Good luck on all of your wagers. And we'll see you this weekend. Cheers.